Again, Todd Shields with Indiana DOT. Let's see, you want to stand up or just raise your hand? It's not going to make much difference if you stand up, but Rachel Wilson. Rachel is our maintenance field support manager, and Clint's the maintenance director of our Crawfordsville, which would be West Central District. Federal highway performance targets. Who in here is your agency's sacrifice to populate the TPM portal? Anybody? Okay, you're lucky then. It was not fun. Kansas got into this a little bit. So the federal methodology is not what I don't think anybody uses to rate their pavements. Our metric is IRI only, but for the federal highway, it's rutting, IRI, and percent cracking. If anyone's familiar with HPMS reporting, it's very comparable to that, but instead of test sections, it's your entire network. Concrete, it's faulting instead of rutting. So those three categories, for it to be considered poor, it has to be poor in two of those. And what we found is we've got a lot of pavements that are really rough, that are poor in roughness. We have a lot of sections that are poor in cracking. We don't have many segments that are poor in both of those. And rutting, I mean, does anybody have a rutting problem anymore? So rutting's always going to be good. Very, very few of our sections are both poor in cracking and in roughness, which means 0.8% of our interstates are currently poor. We had a really hard time communicating that to our MPOs because they said, we drive your roads, they are not 0.8% poor. But that's how it worked out, and yeah, we're more like, our goal is to be 5% poor network-wide, and that's based on IRI. So in addition to the federal highway MAP 21 targets, we recently, last year, 2017, passed a pretty major state transportation bill. We actually got a gas tax increase, as well as indexing the gas tax to indexes, consumer price index, so we actually can fluctuate now without going back to the legislature. It will phase in dedicating the sales tax, 7% sales tax on transportation. Previously, the sales tax on gas could go for anything. Now it's going to be dedicated for transportation. More efficient, Francis talked a little about more efficient vehicles. So we imposed an annual fee on hybrid and electric cars. They're still using the roads, but they're not buying any gas. And what that allowed us to do is over the next couple years, we're going to ramp our capital program up to about $1.2 billion a year. That's a substantial increase over where we'd been. We had been spending, maybe I ought to define what we mean by preservation here. What we consider from a capital program, our preservation program, is anything not including expansion. So adding mobility, adding lanes, new highways, that would not be considered preservation. So we consider preservation anything from crack sealing up to reconstruction. So we've been spending on our pavement side about $250 million a year. We think, and that's what we based our legislation on, we need about $400 million a year in our pavement program to get to that 5% poor. So we'd spent, really the last 10 years, coming in 2005 when we leased our toll road, we got a big $4 billion cash payment up front. We used that for expansion. So we built lots of lanes, lots of new highways. So now the next 10, 20 years, we're going to have to take care of what we got. So it's been a major shift for us into more preservation than from expansion. So how do we manage our assets? The legislation really doesn't change much from how we've been doing business. We have 4 asset teams: safety, mobility, bridge, and roadway. Again, the roadways, about $400 million a year. Bridges, we think, are about $300 million a year, and then for expansion and everything else, that's going to be several hundred million. So I kind of blew through that, but the highlights of the last year, we talked a little bit about this morning. We've got, of our 6 districts, 5 of them have completely transitioned to the hot pour crack sealant now. One district, be our northeast district, they're a mix. They still use some emulsion. They will not get away from it. We're planning about 4,500 lane miles of crack sealing this year. We do have 2 of our 6 districts transitioned completely to CRS-2P for chip seals. We would have more, but we have a supply issue in Indiana. We only have certain suppliers that can produce this material, and so we're kind of limited how much we can expand. But overall, we're going to do about 1,350 miles of chip seal this year. So I talked about scrub seal, I think, a little bit last year, and I'm happy to say now I can actually report we've actually done some scrub seals in-house. And we were talking this morning a little bit. We got into this, and I said, my presentation is gonna feed right into the discussion this morning. So how we started out with scrub seal, we've been messing around with this for a few years. We started out building our own, and there was some discussion this morning about trying to build your own. This apparatus started out life as a changeable message board. Some of you might recognize. So the cool thing about this one is the mast on the message board, it's got a motor, it raises and lowers. So we are able to raise and lower the brooms, but the wheels, we can't do anything with the wheels. They're stuck. So this was a road done exactly, well, a little over a year ago in one of our northern districts. First time we'd ever tried this process on an actual state highway. We'd done access roads, we'd done road to prison, but this is the first time we actually got brave enough to do it on a state highway. And you can see we're starting out here. We talked this morning about getting that fine tune. There's a limit to how much oil you can put out before it's just going to spill out over the brooms. When we turned around, we had an issue. Well, we didn't think about how to do the center joint. You cannot overlap on a scrub seal, so we had to butt them. Bridge decks, we hadn't thought about what to do on a bridge deck because those wheels don't come up. We didn't really want to track that goo all across the bridge deck, so we sanded it and then ran it across as fast as we could. Hope for the best. This is getting toward the end. I mean, we'd come down, we try on going back, and really things are looking pretty good. You can see here that, we got the joint figured out. This is what we've done before. We hadn't swept it yet, so it's looking pretty good. This was the other side. So what we didn't realize back here, that wheel is riding, there's an aggregate shoulder over here. That wheel is riding on the aggregate shoulder, and as we're spraying the oil and it's hitting the rock, it's just snowballing on us. So that wasn't pleasant. This poor guy, I think we gave him a spot bonus. He had to go in there and get the tire off. People ask, what do polymers do in your chip seal? You can see your polymers there. So that led us to think there's got to be a better solution here. So we were trying to find a vendor that made a scrubber specifically for this, not us trying to retrofit something from, brooms from Menards, whatever. So Clint, what did we found? One in Michigan and one in Mississippi, and we couldn't get these guys to return our calls. We couldn't make any progress. So have you ever been having a conversation with somebody and they ask you a question and you pause and think, I can't believe they just asked me such a stupid question? So Larry Tompkins with Ergon, I know Larry, some of you guys may know him. They work out of Mississippi. They do a lot of scrub sealing. So I'll call Larry, where do you guys get your brooms? And there was a pause. And the pause was, I get them out of a guy in Indianapolis. Okay? So I took one of our equipment guys and we met right on the west side, 20 minutes from my house. So makes these things special. They're called the Greens Groomer, so I got to throw some love out. Sean Heinen, I think he's here today. He's got a booth set up, I believe. But they make these specifically for scrub sealing. Can't really tell, but there's batteries here. The wheels come up. You can really adjust, how wide you need to go on the brooms. Again, these things they're specifically built for this. So we couldn't wait to try it. I don't know if you guys noticed in the other picture, that was in northern Indiana, and it was in cornfields. This one's in southern Indiana, and it's cornfields. There's a pattern there. There's corn. So anyway, this was shoulders. We did, it was a Super 2 section, hot day. Super 2 section, southern Indiana. We decided to do the shoulders. We talk about materials. The aggregate they used in northern Indiana, I think, is really a perfect aggregate for scrub seal. It's bigger than sand, but it's very fine. It's dolomite. We'll call it kitty litter colloquially because it literally looks like kitty litter. It's about that size, very uniform. On these shoulders, they weren't able to get that material, but they had just some chip seal stone left over, so that's what we ended up using. And seeing as how it was a concrete pavement with asphalt shoulders that were low anyway, it worked out okay. So we pull up. I think that's every dump truck in the Vincennes district was out there. You can see there's rumbles. They were the old rolled-in rumbles, but the scrub, it came right through. Beautiful. You can see the wheels come out. It comes right along. No issues at all. We had a railroad crossing on this job, so again, you put the wheels down, drove right across the railroad track, didn't have a problem. Final product. And I know a couple more roads were done after this one as well that I have not had a chance to see yet. So we're hopeful that scrub seal, a lot of talk this morning, but we talk about these rural roads, the low volume roads that we're just, we're going to chip seal them. We're going to try to chip seal them again, and then maybe 20, 25 years, we're going to come back and resurface them. we can't crack seal everything. You get roads that get too far gone, they're way beyond a crack seal, they're way beyond a chip seal. We think the scrub seal may be that intermediate gap that's going to help us get 25 years out of some of these rural roads. Questions? Correct. Question is, we're doing this in-house. This is our in-house crews right now. No, good question. Question is, do we have a statewide crew? No. This is still kind of a pilot for us. We're getting our feet wet with it. The goal, Clint's goal, was to have a couple roads in every district, and 2 districts said, we'll watch the other 4. And so it's the district chip seal crews that are doing these. How do you clean the brooms? I wish I had a picture of that. We soak the brooms, and maybe I'm saying something I shouldn't here. We soak them in, what's the Romar? There's the anti, the stuff you coat your dump truck bed with, you coat your shovels with, not diesel fuel. We coat them with that stuff. So we spray that on there before we start, and then when we're done, we take a steam jenny to them and kind of blast them off. We're told, the greens groomer there, that probably about once a year, if you're doing a lot of jobs, probably need to change the brooms about once a year. And the way the greens broom is, each broom there's 1 bolt. So they tell us that one determined guy, with a power wrench, a couple hours can have those brooms changed out. Oh no, yeah. No, it'll. Question is, did we sweep the shoulders? They came back and swept them the next day, just like a chip seal. Yes. So question on the we call them pop-up markers, flex tabs. They probably got a million names. Did we not use them on this road? Yeah, we got them. There we go. Yeah. Is that what you're asking about, the pop-up markers? We don't have it shouldn't, again, with shoulders, we didn't have to use them, but it shouldn't be an issue. The brooms did go right over the tabs, but they didn't damage them. We have a policy, though. We do use the pop-up markers, and within 14 days of when we cover it, we have to have the permanent striping back in place. And we have to have signs up as well until that, no center stripe signs, but good question. So it's a good question. The question was, did we clean our cracks out ahead of time, blow them out ahead of time? I mentioned this is still a pilot, so this road that we're doing here really was not a good scrub seal candidate. It was in really good condition. So it was one that the district felt we're going to get the process figured out. It wasn't really a good cracked up road. The shoulders, the ones in Vincennes that I showed you, those really had some cracking. But other than just sweeping the road normally like we would for a chip seal, we did not take air out there and blow them out. So good point. Thanks. All right, thanks.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.